Thank you very much. I'd like to start with a plea to all of you, a plea to think differently about something that we all do every day, sometimes at night, and something that I think we can all do better. But first, let me start with a question, because I want to set the baseline and see if all of you fit into this category. So raise your hands. How many of you wear clothes every day? Good. I was a little bit nervous to ask that, so that's very good. And by saying that we all wear clothes every day, actually collectively we're representing thousands of women and men who have had some role in making the clothes that we have on our bodies today. And by choosing to wear clothes, we're actually creating millions of jobs in some of the poorest countries in the world. But let me ask you a second question, which is, think of your closets at home. How many of you wear every single item in your closet, not at the same time, but on a regular basis? Raise your hands. Yeah? Well, that's good. We have some minimalists. Well done for your efficient use of your wardrobe. But the bottom line is most of us don't. In fact, of the clothes that we buy, we tend to wear very little of them. And if you actually look at our closets, they tend to look like this. And on average, we wear about 20% of what's in them. Hopefully you don't have a woman stuck in your closet, but that was the best picture I could find. And this is a problem. It's a problem because every second we, across the world, throw away the equivalent of one garbage truck worth of textiles every second. So these clothes we aren't wearing aren't necessarily going to the next use, they're going to landfill. And it's getting worse. There was a study released last November by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and it showed that over the past 15 years, clothing production has doubled, yet clothing utilization, which is how many times we wear something before we chuck it away, has actually decreased by 36% over that same period. So bottom line is that we want more and more clothes that's cheaper and cheaper, yet we're not using them all. And when I say we, I actually mean we, because I'm part of this. And I was thinking about a couple years ago, I went to Scotland with my husband and kids, and he took the boys shopping and came back with this bag with beautiful hoodies in them. And he said to me, "Can you believe this? These were only £5. That's about €6. And I said, I can't believe it. First of all, I felt guilty because my day job is running a foundation trying to help improve the lives and livelihoods of people who make our clothes. But secondly, these were really nice hoodies. I can't believe they were only £5. And the next day when I took my son Charlie to the high street, I saw this sign. And this really impacted me because £14, which is about €16, for a winter jacket, I couldn't get my head around. In fact, I've been to factories in China, and I know it takes about 18 to 20 man hours, usually women hours, to sew these things. And we know that labor is a very small percentage of the total cost basis of a jacket, or any product for that matter. So how does that math work? The bottom line is that we collectively are mesmerized and compelled by this bountiful and inexpensive and trendy clothing that's on offer across high streets in Europe and the world over. But that's okay, because in these same shops, there's recycling bins. So don't we feel better when we just put the clothes we're not wearing anymore in those bins? Don't we feel that recycling can change the world, or at least save it? And sure, it's better than throwing it in landfill, but the truth is, when you look at what actually happens to a t-shirt, there was a study that came out about a month ago by Mistra Future Fashion, which is a research program in Sweden. And it looked at what actually happens when you chuck that t-shirt into the bin. And the reality is that only 10% of that goes to what they call cream, which is resale in a similar market. But the rest is really downcycled And by downcycled, that could mean mechanically chopped up to be used as insulation. It could mean going to landfill. That still happens, even when you think you're recycling. It could mean being shipped to a place like Panipat, India, which is actually known as the cast-off capital of the world. And when you think of a city, Panipat, India, of which probably none of us have heard of before, and you think of the people rummaging through the clothes that we choose to throw away, what do you think they think of us when they see what we no longer value?
इधर भी ऐसा ही बोलते हैं सब कि उधर पानी की कमी इसलिए इधर आता है ये सब ऐसा ही बोलते हैं
पानी जितने में ये लोग पानी खरीदते हैं ना उतने में वो लोग कपड़े खरीद सकते हैं इसलिए 2-4 बार ये कपड़े यूज करके फिर वो फेंक देते हैं ऐसे सब बोल रहे हैं वही हम सुन रहे हैं और किसी ने नहीं बताया
पता नहीं उसको कपड़े धोने अच्छे लगते हैं या नहीं या क्या बातें हो तो पता नहीं
So they think water is more expensive than our clothes. We've gotten to the point where it's actually easier or maybe cheaper for us to buy something, wear it once or twice, and chuck it in the recycling bin. The bottom line is that if we want to transform the global fashion industry, we have to change business as usual. And by business as usual, I'm talking not only about the way clothes are made and used, but also how they're reused. Because the reality is that the global fashion industry today is not creating and having an impact, a positive impact, a restorative impact on our environment. And it's not necessarily creating dignified and safe jobs for all. We cannot forget, it's only 5 years ago that we saw one of the worst industrial disasters in this industry, the collapse of the Rana Plaza building. Which killed 1,134 people and injured thousands more. And this is not acceptable on our watch. But how do we change that? How do we change the fact that business as usual is not creating thriving and safe livelihoods for people around the world? And the reality is, to change this industry, we don't want it to be just less bad, using less water, less energy, having fewer accidents. We want it to be more good, because when you think about it, using fewer chemicals on our clothes, using less hazardous pesticides on the cotton fields in India is still putting poison in the waterways of these vulnerable communities. Less bad is still bad. So we need to change. And I believe that key to that change is innovation. We need technical innovation, which is how we make our clothes, and we need process innovation, which is how we sell and use our clothes. In fact, we should stop even talking about clothes having an end of life. Clothes shouldn't have an end of life. They have an end of use. We're users, and then they go on to their next use. So last year, we at C&A Foundation started a new initiative called Fashion for Good. The idea of this is it is a collaborative platform to accelerate innovation that can change this industry. And what's key to this initiative is it brings the industry together. Brands and retailers, including here in France, the Kering Group and Galeries Lafayette are part of it. It brings innovators together and accelerates them so that they can scale and test what they're doing in the supply chains of the brand partners. It's a brilliant concept, and it's something that's actually found innovators like this one, which has taken glitter, and for those that know glitter, especially if you have daughters, it's pretty nasty. It's made up of microplastics, which end up in our seas and our fish and our drinking water. They're making sustainable glitter that can biodegrade. They're transforming glam around the world. And I think the reality is that innovation is critical, and the opportunities for innovation are vast. Consider this. What if the red rivers that we see as a result of this industry, this is a river in India, from the dyes, this pollution can be eliminated because of a technology that we currently see being used on a Stella McCartney dress that's on display right now at the V&A Museum in London. This technology, by a company called Colorifics, actually is using synthetic biology, sort of what you see in molasses, that can actually transfix the color onto the fabric without the use of heavy metals, solvents, acids, these nasty things that would normally flush into our waterways. It's changing the way we bring color to our clothes. What if the poor working conditions that we see in this industry around the world can be changed with a platform that shines a light on the root cause of what perpetuates them? We're supporting an organization called Better Buying, which effectively is a trip advisor. It allows factories to rate their buyers. Now, why would that impact working conditions? Well, the reality is that buyer behavior has a lot of impact on what happens in the factory. If I place an order in a factory for more than the capacity of the factory, then what's going to happen? It's going to be outsourced to one of those shady subcontractors that we saw in the Rana Plaza disaster, or it will result in overtime, excessive overtime, to try to meet that deadline. So this creates more transparency and accountability and a better working condition for workers. And what if these piles and piles of old clothes that we're happy to discard can be made into new clothes? It's hard to do that right now because the technology that removes cotton or biological from polyester or technical in fabric is not really commercialized. And if you own a stretchy t-shirt, you have a product that combines both these things, and the best you can do is chop it up and make it insulation. But Worn Again is an innovator that we're supporting, which effectively, as it says, is trying to transform old things so we don't have to use virgin sources. So this is the future that I think is going to transform this industry. And now we need to shine a light on ourselves, because I think we all have a responsibility to disrupt how we think about buying and using our clothes. And I think there's 3 ways that we can do that. And the first way really starts with awareness. We collectively have a responsibility to know where our clothes come from, and ideally the conditions under which they're made. There's an initiative called Fashion Revolution that started right after the Rana Plaza disaster. And their goal is to try to encourage people around the world to ask their favorite brands, who made my clothes? It's very simple, but it puts transparency on the agenda. And what I like about this is it puts power into our hands as customers of our favorite brands, because when you walk into a shop and you buy something, yes, you're making a purchasing decision, but you're also making a sourcing decision. And if you don't have all the information that you need, how do you know if that product was made well? So awareness is number 1. Number 2, we need to get more out of the clothes that we already have. We need to wash them less. Apparently, the CEO of Levi's never washes his jeans, puts them in the freezer. We need to buy higher quality. And when we have something that we've loved for many years, but we just don't want it anymore, don't chuck it into that recycling bin. Invite some friends over and have a swishing party. And swishing, as we say here, it's like shopping, but free. You can Google it, find out more. There's lots of tips online. And finally, we have to get over that psychological barrier around wearing other people's clothes. Because that's sometimes what's preventing us from embracing new models. I know the concept of wearing other people's jeans is perhaps not as tasteful as we like, especially if they haven't been washed in a year. But I think the bottom line is that we have no excuse. There's models popping up, from eBay to leasing models where you can pay to get a pair of jeans for 2 months to 12 months, to lending libraries that allow you to become a member and you can actually take a couple pieces every month, to even a fast fashion retailer in Germany recently launched a subscription service for new parents to subscribe to get clothes for their kids and send them back when they're done. So there's no excuse for us not to do our bit to try to disrupt this $2.5 trillion industry. And when we do, t-shirt by t-shirt, we will collectively start getting out of our comfort zones and possibly into someone else's jeans. And together and slowly, we can do our bit to help make fashion a force not for less bad, but a force for good. Thank you. I tried.